Hey, guys, welcome back to the podcast. It's your host, Cici, and I have a very special guest with me today, Casey Molifua, senior lecturer in physical education and human performance. So welcome to the
Thanks
podcast.
for having me, guys. Thank you.
Absolutely.
Yeah, excited to be here.
Yes, so we're just going to be kind of talking about who is Casey and kind of your experience and kind of your story today.
For sure.
Yeah, so whenever you want to start or however far you want to go, you take it away.
This is my 14th year here at Hastings. I got here in the spring or the fall of 2011. I was a football player here. I graduated in 2015 with my exercise science degree. I had a year of eligibility left because a fat kid from Concordia fell on my leg, so he broke my leg, and so I had a fifth year of eligibility left. So I came back as a master's student, as a fifth year football player. Started my master's program here at Hastings. Graduated as a physical education K through 12 PE and health and master's in teaching. And so I was in 2017, and then I started teaching half-time. I was kind of just an adjunct, and I was also doing some what was used to be called the Learning Center, which is now called Studio 200, and, basically academic support. Those two roles were my first real big boy job.
Yep.
And then since then, I've been full-time as a faculty member here at Hastings in the physical education department. And so I've been here since 2011. Hastings is my home. It's been my home, our home for a number of years. And everybody's like, how long are you going to stay in Hastings? I go, I just sign a 1-year deal every year, and we just keep doing it year by year. But
Riding it out.
This is our home. This is for sure our home, and maybe someday we'll raise a family here. And
yes.
That's kind of my gist of Hastings College history. Been here since 2011. So
You plan on staying?
I hope we'll see. We will see. We definitely love it here. So
That's great. And listening to your experience about starting out as a football player and then eventually becoming, an adjunct is just crazy to see how big that community has impacted you.
Mm-hmm.
And what ways has the Hastings community impacted you to make you stay?
Yeah, I think I credit a lot. People ask me, Hastings, to be fully transparent, Hastings football is actually the lesser of the three
Really?
scholarships. So it's just kind of full circle moment here. I'm sitting in Phoenix, Arizona. We're doing a Phoenix face-to-face. Arizona is our third biggest state that we have students coming from. So I'm sitting in a hotel room with Matt Franson, the head football coach here at Hastings. Coach Franson recruited me to play at Hastings, or to play when he was at Doane. He recruited both me and my brother. I was dead set on going to Doane. They had offered me more money than Hastings did. I actually called Coach Franson because I had two of my best friends were coming to play football here as well. So I called Coach Franson. He was thinking I'm ready to sign my letter of intent, and I actually told him that I'm not going to Doane. I'm going to go to Hastings instead. And so, full circle moment. Back. This is 2023 or 2022 when me and Coach Franson sat down in this hotel room. We're sharing a beer together, and all of a sudden he's like, we were supposed to build a defense around you, and then you chose to be a Bronco, not a Doane Tiger. So, it's always been the people and always will be the people. For when I was a student here and I was an undergrad and a master's student here, it was really, my teammates for sure, who kind of quote unquote saved my life, but also gave me purpose. But then it was my mentors, which is, my teachers, my first bosses, Becky Hammock and Beth Funky were just the people who saw something in me that I necessarily didn't see in myself as a crazy 22-year-old who had just
menacing, menace to society.
I was definitely a menace to society. That's for a whole nother podcast, I think. But they really saw something in me that I wasn't able to see in myself, and so this mentorship that I received, especially in undergrad, it was more from my teammates. I had a coach or two who really pushed me and mentored me and said, "Hey, you can do bigger and better things than what you're doing." But then it was when I was getting into my graduate program and my to really push me towards a career of teaching, that was the point where I was like, okay, these people are really serving an important purpose in my life. How can I now reciprocate that in my 7th or 8th year in teaching? And so that's my whole purpose now is to coach, teach, and mentor, whether it's, whether I'm teaching students in my healthy lifestyles class, if I'm coaching, helping out with baseball and doing some mental performance stuff with women's basketball, all those ways, or if I'm speaking, we were just, when we were off air, we were kind of talking about some of my speaking engagements. That's a way for me to influence and mentor people, even if it's not over a semester over in the block system. It's just an hour, 2 hours of my time that I can share my life experiences and hopefully impact people in the most like authentic way, but hopefully in a positive way too. So, and I've learned both from my mistakes, but also learning my philosophies and some of my values to share with people that hopefully they don't have to go through the same mistakes that I went through or that I made, or even the hardships that I've, kind of went through. So
yeah, and even, you're like giving people kind of a guidebook and giving them that mentorship that they need, and I think that's super, super great.
yeah.
And talking about, hardships, like you've experienced a lot that has shaped who you are.
For sure.
And you've gone through an extensive amount of, trauma and extensive amount of different, things. And you came out on top, and you're still willing to help the community, and you're still willing to help people. And I think that's just such a great thing.
Yeah, I appreciate that.
Absolutely.
I just think like one of my I call it a philosophy, called like a value that I try to live by is like everybody goes through tough times. Everybody goes through adversity. Everybody goes through trials and tribulations. And when when me and Miss Casey were talking beforehand, it was, one of the things that we alluded to was just like life goes on, and it's like such a hard truth, but it's something that I truly believe in is no matter if you lose your best friend or a grandparent, whether it's a sudden death or an 8-year long, dragged out, that's how it was with my dad. Life still goes on, and the world continues to spin, and there's responsibilities, and there's people who are leaning on you to show up at your best. And so for me, it may be a cynical way to kind of look through a cynical lens to look through to see the world. But I truly believe that it's just like there's a time for grief, and there's a time to process, and there's a time for crying, and there's a time for love and support, and to be with my people. But I also believe that there's a time to work, and there's a time to put things on the back burner for a second and say, my wife, my family, my students, my student athletes, these people who are paying me to come speak to them, they deserve my undivided attention. And so, and my energy and my time, and to recognize and find that balance of there's a time to be in that, what we call the high excellence cycle, right? Versus being in that deep refueling cycle, that it's okay to slow down for a second, process, grieve, and experience those losses. It used to be a defense mechanism. Now it's something that I recognize, like I have a job to do, and I have I have my purpose here, but it's also, there's a time for me to slow down, process, cry, be with my loved ones and things like that. So, yeah.
So what would you say are some healthy grieving types, or for people out there who are grieving, whether it's about a certain event that happened, or certain death, or what may it be not? What have you found through your experience as healthy grieving
For
tips?
sure. I think the number one thing for me, and I've talked about this in my classes, and this is why I've tried to introduce some sort of, it's not like essay writing, it's more like journaling and just kind of like discovering more and more about yourself. I think that was the number one habit that changed my life for the better, was writing. And it really was journaling, the thing that's truly saved my life, because I was not the type of person, and people who grieve, they like to go and talk to, whether it's loved ones. Zaylee on the last episode was talking about, like, sometimes I don't need to talk to my loved ones. I need to talk to a professional who's certified and licensed to give me tools to challenge me. So for me, I never went to therapy. That just wasn't my thing. I would still be open to doing that at some point, but at that time in my life, it wasn't. I think it was this machismo way to kind of like get through things. So I didn't want to be seen as weak. So the thing that I really found that kind of grounded me and helped me kind of push forward was writing. And so really I started off with just writing how my day, how my week, how my month was going, some of the thoughts that I've had. When my dad had passed, I actually found his journal from 1993.
Really?
And he had only had like 20 entries in it. And it was a gift that was given to him by my Uncle Wally. And it says, it just has the word journal on it, and says Nielsen Utai Fea Molifua. And on the opening cover, it's a letter from his brother that says, feel free to like express your thoughts, or to write down your dreams and your aspirations and what's going on in your world. And so it was just kind of like this like serendipitous moment where like I found my dad's journal while we were cleaning out some of his belongings and stuff. And so I was like, Mom, can I take this? And she's like, it's all yours. And so that has really been the piece for me that has really shaped my life. And I do it, once or twice a week. Long journal entries, maybe not as much. Like when we go on vacation, I take my big journal and I kind of give my life update, but I have a small one that sits on my nightstand, and I'll just gratitudes and just things that I'm thankful for. So long-winded answer, I apologize.
No,
like the journal for sure. I also think maybe one that doesn't get talked about enough is just like basic physical activity. I think, being in the physical education and human performance department, it's just like part of my who I am and like the things that I teach. And so I always try to practice what I preach. And so being in the gym and playing pickleball or being on the golf course and those things, like, yeah, it's like a part of like my work and my work identity, I suppose. But for me, it's almost more now the mental and emotional piece that I get from the physical activity than it is the physical benefits that I get, where it's the gym for me isn't like, oh man, this bench, I want my bench press to go up. It's if I'm not going to the gym, those kind of, call it depression, you call it anxiety, those kind of thoughts creep into my head. Yeah. And when I'm not being physically active, when I'm kind of just, the kids call it like rotting, right? You guys,
yeah,
that's
we said that in the last
yeah, like, so sometimes the best thing for me is just going for a walk with the dog, or we just go and pick up some barbells and just start moving some weight and just kind of breaking out that sweat. And all of a sudden, 30 minutes into even just a light workout, I don't do much powerlifting anymore, but it used to be something really heavy to kind of like stimulate that response physiologically for me. Now it's just kind of that basic motion and just a quick lather of just sweat. And now I'm like, oh man, my back's starting to feel good. Like my mind's the energy, the vibes are a little bit higher. So for me, one that I would challenge people is just basic physical activity. It doesn't have to be barbells. It doesn't have to be going and setting world record PR deadlifts or
not trying to be Olympic weightlifters.
Right, but I just think going and playing pickleball and just chasing a ball for 30 minutes. You know what I mean? Yeah. The joy that you have in just like being outside and kind of some of those things that you were talking about last episode is just like go outside, smell the roses, go for a walk, pet a dog,
play some pickleball.
Yeah, go play some pickleball.
Didn't know Casey's a really good pickleball player. He gets it really into it. It's actually
probably too into it. Me and Shay Hyde.
Yeah, you and Shay are like the dynamic duo.
We had some battles, and then we decided to team up on the last.
And that was scary.
And we had a lot of fun. But that's what it's all about too. It's all about building those relationships is a huge piece to grief too. Yeah. Right. It's finding those people that you can lean on. I'm so blessed to have so many friends in my life. It's actually kind of foreign. But now like my friend group, I just had a FaceTime with one of my best friends, Taj Willingham. And he just called me randomly, or I called him randomly yesterday when I was on my walk with Nova. And before we hang up the phone, we always just tell each other we love each other. As he's 29, I'm 31. I don't know if a lot of like older men do that and express our love to one another, but my friend group has like really embraced.
There's a whole lot of love.
Yeah, there is. And when we see each other, it's not just like vocal love. It's just like big hugs, big handshakes,
you just feel the energy.
For sure.
You just feel that compassion and just the pure like raw love of like, I love your existence as a human being.
100%.
And it's appreciation of that. And I feel it's like a complete different feeling.
Yeah. Which can turn some people off because like my friend group is like big personalities, right?
Oh yeah.
Big auras, big energy, big boisterous attitudes. Mm-hmm. That was the Menace in Society part that we touched on briefly, but now it's turned into this really really cool love. Tay-Day, who is engaged to my sister before she passed, we were like best friends, and they fell in love, and it was like this little love triangle thing that was kind of going on between my sister and one of my best friends.
Yeah.
And so Tay-Day to this day is still one of my best friends. He's the best barber in town. Go see him on North Minnesota. But every time before I leave the shop, we do our handshake, show physical love, and then before I leave, he's like, "Love you, bro," and I always say, "Love you too, man. Thank you." So it's just being able to express that to people, and I think once you lose somebody. I knew I was going to tear up on this stinking podcast today, but when you have those loved ones, it's easy to take that for granted. Then all of a sudden something can be taken from you so fast. And so I think my friend group, along with my family, it's easy just for us to say I love you and like truly mean that, and not, you know, try not to take that for granted is something that we try to practice. So kind of went on a tangent on your original conversation, but I just think maybe one of those coping strategies or one of the ways that we deal with grief is tell those people that you love them. Even in that, I had you all just send that text message that on like the second week of class, right? When we talk about gratitude or we talk about like family wellness, maybe it was an old coach, maybe it was an old teacher. Just send that quick text message, you know, to your mom or to your dad or to grandma, right? Hey grandma, just, you know, for me, it's my Nana. Hey Nana, love you. Hope you and Papa have a great day, right? Because just even that little 2-minute act of service could make somebody's day or make your own day. So, just trying to put a bunch of positivity out into the world. So
I love that.
Yeah.
I mean, other than that, I think what you're doing is really great, and I know that you move a lot of people, and there's a lot of things that you do back for the community, given how much loss you've taken.
Yeah.
Especially like, you know, Miles for Mick, that was like the biggest thing, I think the biggest impact. And then there's a scholarship for Mick, correct?
Yes. Yep.
Yeah. So can you kind of dive in a little bit about how you have been able to kind of give back into that community, given that circumstance and given that, you know, what has happened?
Yeah. So it's kind of funny. I talked about this with Emil before when we were first kind of like talking about like, how did this get started? And so really it was Brian Core, the head glass blowing teacher here, who's just like, just my guy. You know, you meet these people in life and sometimes you just hop on the same wavelength. That was Brian.
Just gets it.
Yeah, that was me and Brian. And so we were just lifting one day and we were just talking about David Goggins does this 4x4x48 challenge. And so we had talked about doing something like challenging, like, and it was meant to be physically active. Like that was like the thing. And so we were like, well, how about we do something a little bit different that maybe isn't as well known? And so we planned to run 1 mile every hour for 24 hours. It was a little bit more different than the 4x48 because at the time I didn't know if I could even run 4 miles. Like I was like, I can do a mile. I don't know if I can do 4. And so Brian, just being who Brian is and just having his loving and giving spirit, just says like, well, what if we did it for something, you know? And we had just the Alumni Foundation and my family had just created the Michaela Molifua Memorial Scholarship, and so they had pushed it out and they had got some initial funding, which was awesome, and we were really appreciative of that. And then Brian just goes like, what if we ran and raised money for your sister's scholarship? And it just kind of took off from there. And so it's just been kind of cool over this will be the 4th year that we do it. In April, we haven't like officially set the date, but like we just think that April, that springtime is just kind of like the best time to do it.
It's nice out and like it's not like too chilly.
Yeah.
And, like, everybody's active and
yeah.
It's like if you haven't participated in Miles for Mick this year, you definitely have to come out because it is like everybody from the community and even outside of the community.
For
as
sure.
Well.
Yeah.
Like everybody gets involved.
Yeah. And so this year, like I should have brought a picture of it. Maybe I can just send you guys a picture. We just kind of did a poster of it this last year, and everybody kind of signed it, which was like really, really neat. It's actually downstairs in our basement now.
I love that.
But like, what does it look like to like truly like record like every single person? Like how many miles could we find somebody to sponsor? Like, you know, for every mile that's walked, we'll donate $1 or even 50 cents. But at first it was like to push physical activity. And then secondly, like selfishly, it was to push out Michaela's scholarship.
Yeah.
And then as me and Brian started to like break down year to year, as we continue to plan this event, it was so much more than just people being physically active. It was so much more than raising money to give back to students, student athletes and like financial, like who have financial needs. It was so much more about like community. It was so much more about gathering people. It was so much more about this culture of bringing people together. And that's what Michaela's legacy, and that's who she was. Like she was all about, when she was at Lincoln North Star, our high school, she bled Lincoln North Star colors. Like she just loved that community. And then the same thing when she came here to Hastings, I knew when she said, like, hey, I think I'm going to follow you to Hastings, I knew it was going to be the exact same thing. And being a cheerleader and being kind of having that
football brother.
Yeah, it was just very natural for her.
Yeah.
But she was like the life of the party, and I mean that literally and figuratively. Like she was the life of all parties. And so for me now, this event, if we raise $5,000 every year, I think that'd be great. But if we had 1,000 people come out this year, that would be more of a success to me than the actual money. And so it took me 3 or 4 years to actually realize that. And so that's just one of the like life lessons that I've learned is, you know, sometimes you have this idea of what you want to push out into the world, and you have this idea that it's going to be this big grand project, and all of a sudden, like, the universe or God, or call it what you want, kind of spins it on its head, and then it comes out to this other completely beautiful thing that you didn't even know, or initially that you thought of. And like, so
that was the path, I guess.
It was, and it's kind of taken shape of its own. And as long as I'm here, I will continue to do this event. And for me, it's no longer a physical activity event. It's no longer, yes, we're going to try to raise money for Michaela's scholarship, but to me, this is the essence of like a community event. This is a, Rich Lloyd, he said it was like, this is the definition of one campus, one community.
Absolutely.
And so as long as I'm here, as long as I'm still at Hastings College or wherever this world, like, this will be something that I do every year until the day that, until the year that I die. So yeah, it's a really cool.
I actually have my sticker. I'm going to cover the other one. Miles for Mick.
Yeah. 1 mile every hour
for 24 hours.
Yeah. So I know our OMC team, they just like, hey, like, what if we do some stickers?
Yes.
So Mike Howie and his team, they pushed out some stickers for us. And this year it's just like, how do we add something different? So me and Brian were kind of talking about doing, maybe it's only 12 hours this year, so we go 6 a.m. to 6 p.m. and then do like a party in the park. That's kind of like the idea.
That
so like,
would be pretty cool.
Do some food trucks. The Gray Center kind of has that perfect loop where we could park some trucks and stuff. So
I think that would be a great
ideas. Nothing is set in stone yet. Don't put me on record. I know this is going to be on the line forever, but I just think, continue to change it up and challenge ourselves to grow. I always tell you students to step outside of your comfort zone. Like, marketing and communication and like fundraising is so outside of my comfort zone, and I hate it. So it's good for me to do this every year because it forces me to kind of grow and develop and learn new skills as well.
So kind of going off that, I mean, she's already kind of left her mark, and like, you're continuing her legacy. So like, once, hypothetically, like, if you leave, like, how else are you going to show her the legacy of your sister?
Yeah, I think it's just like what we kind of alluded to at the very beginning. So just kind of a quick story. When Michaela passed away in June of 2020. Yeah, it was during COVID. Around like March is like when everybody started to go home, right, during COVID. Yeah. And so when I went home initially, Miss Casey was living in Lincoln, and my mom was still living in Lincoln. So it worked out perfect where I got the best of both worlds, where I was there to kind of be with my family, but I kind of had a space as well because I basically moved in with Miss Casey. And so in March, Michaela was kind of in her like last hospital stay that she had. She was rushed to the emergency room and before she was put on hospice. And so it was just me and her. We were just kind of sitting in the hospital room, and when she was at this point in life, like, did not have like a lot of energy and a lot of that spirit. And so we kind of just sat there, like, we just didn't really say anything. We were just kind of in each other's presence. And so because that's just how me and my sister were. Like, we could hang out and talk for hours, or we could just kind of
enjoy the silence together.
Yep. And so that's what we did. And I kind of just looked at her, and we were both kind of crying, and she's like, "It's okay." And I'm like, "Is it?" And she's like, my favorite phrase is, she's like, it just is what it is. And like, that brought so much, like, even like when I reflect on it now, like, I can like feel her spirit when I'm like talking about this now. It's when I hear that phrase, like, it is what it is, let things be what they are. That kind of brings me back to being where my feet are. And it's not just, I think everybody feels what depression feels like. And I kind of define depression as going back in past and trying to make amends, or living in regret, or trying to change the things that have already happened. I think we all know what that feels like. Anxiety and anxiousness is trying to mold or trying to take control of the future, the things that we don't really have much control over right now. Trying to shovel snow that hasn't fallen yet, right?
Yep.
And so for me, when I hear the phrase, it is what it is, like, for whatever reason, it just brings me back to that present moment. And so from when me and my sister were in that hospital room together, and then, Tay had just kind of gotten there too. So it was just kind of the three of us. She just kept saying it. It's like, it is what it is. Like, just let things be what they are. And that just brings me so much peace. And so it's just kind of a phrase that, sometimes just kind of brings me back to center when I'm trying to control things that are in the future, or I'm trying to I'm kind of in that blue state, right? That
imbalance.
that depressive state.
Yeah.
So for me, it's just like be where my feet are. Like be grateful for this opportunity. Don't think about the 104 assignments that I have on Canvas to grade after this, right? It's just like to be right here, try to be as present as possible. And I think the biggest thing that I learned from my dad is he would just always say is just like be the example, you know. And so for me to have the responsibility and to have the privilege to coach and to teach and to mentor both young people and just people in general, is just always trying to do that. And I'm not perfect by any means. There's days where I'm sure my family and my significant other, my Miss Casey, they sometimes want to kill me, right? Because I'm not fun to be around. And it's just sometimes like if I can have a more positive week than I did negative week, that's a plus in my book. And so I'm not trying to say that I'm perfect by any means, or some days you just have crappy classes, or you know, you just have those weeks or practices for my student athletes. But it's like, can we just nip that one in the bud and not make two in a row, right?
Yeah.
Don't let a 5-minute conversation that you have with your roommate or your significant other, your best friend, ruin the next
week or whatever.
48 hours of the week. So just really trying to be present and be, you know, exactly where my feet are. So
I love that.
yeah, thank you. Yeah,
absolutely. And so kind of talking also about Miss Casey. I know that she also dealt with, you know, a death in her family as well, and that, you know, it's almost like something connected you two. And I want to cover that
for sure.
Like, I want to know what those discussions were about, and like, how did you guys connect so strongly? Because you guys have been together for how long now?
2017. So
yeah, so a hot minute.
7 years. Yeah,
a hot minute. So I want to know like that connection. I want to know that, like, I just want to know.
Yeah. So Norm, Casey's dad, was diagnosed with pancreatic cancer in December of 2015, and so I was still a student here at the time, and so we had kind of known, like we knew who each other were just because we shared the same name.
Love story everyone's been waiting for on campus.
We'll see. So we obviously shared the same name, so there's already just a natural connection there, right? But it was actually her older teammates that I was like really hanging out with, and like Michaela and Logan, like we just different Michaela. We just kind of all on the same wavelength. I knew of her. It wasn't anything too crazy. And so I actually, my first year of teaching, Miss Casey was in my class at the time, and she was one of my favorite classes ever. It was just like my first year of teaching. It was just like my old teammates. I had one of my old roommates, or two of my old roommates in there.
Like, this is so weird.
I had my sister, right? I had my future wife to be, right? But one of the things when my dad passed away in March of 2018. Miss Casey's dad passed away in March of 2019. Mm-hmm. And so for us, when, you know, Norm was kind of battling cancer and Michaela was was diagnosed with cancer for the second time, it was pain that really brought us close together. Yeah. And so for us, it was, I wouldn't say it was like necessarily the thing that like brought us together, but we definitely had that commonality of like, not everybody understands what it's like to, even though we hadn't lost our parents at the time, to know what it's like to start that grieving process, right? Absolutely. Our grieving processes were much longer because, you know, my dad had a stroke in 2011. He didn't pass away until 2018. Casey's dad was diagnosed with cancer in 2015. He passed away in 2019. So that's a slow grieving process. Yeah. And so for us, it was just a way for us that we just like understood what a lot of people didn't understand. Yeah. And so
seen in a way, and you're like, somebody finally gets me.
100%. Yeah. Like that's exactly how it was. And so, I wouldn't say we grieved in the most, like we didn't grieve in the same ways, but we definitely understood. There was a level of understanding that we had for one another. And the thing that I appreciate most about her was when, so it was my dad in 2018, her dad in 2019, Michaela in 2020. And so within a span of 3 years, like our family suffered so much loss, right? Within 3 years. And so the one thing that I really appreciate about her, and the thing that we've talked about before, is we gave each other the space that we needed. How I grieve and how she grieves, we may be similar, but they were, you know, sometimes very different. But the thing that I loved was I always knew that there was space to be had if I wanted it, but she never felt like, it was never like, are you doing okay? Are you doing okay? Like, what about me? What about me? Yeah. It was never selfish on her part. It was always selfless, where she was just like, I'm here for you. like if you want to talk about it, we can talk about it. If you want to go play 15 rounds of golf and that's how you want to grieve today, go do it, right? If you want to get a 12 pack of Krispy Kreme hot glazed donuts, I'll do that for you, right? And so for me it was, and that was actually a true story. She got me 12 donuts and she's like, yeah, I got us some donuts. And I like 15 minutes go by. There's like 9 of them are gone. And I'm like, hey, did you want one of these donuts? And she's like, yeah, maybe at some point. And I'm like looking down, there's like 3 left. And so like stress eating was maybe not one of the most positive grieving.
Got 30 minutes.
Yeah. It wasn't the most positive grieving, coping mechanism that I had, but, I just,
yourself a little sweet treat.
It was a lot of sweet treat. But I just appreciated how much, space there was, but even if she wasn't like by my side, like rubbing my back or like giving me tissues or to cry, it was like I always knew that support was there if I needed it in an instant.
It was solid.
And so that pain, that level of understanding, that level of like sympathy and empathy really is what created trust and love, which are now like this, like the backbone of our relationship, I would say. And not just our relationship, but also our friendship is I'm the type of person that, and we said this from like Jump Street, was just like trust is so much more important to us than love. And that trust of understanding pain and understanding grievance and understanding loss, that was the action. Those were the words, it's not the words you say, it's the actions that you do. Mm-hmm. By her showing her actions showed me that I could trust her. Right. Yeah. And it was the same thing, I hope, was vice versa, where we built, this level of trust with one another to then love one another. So, yeah, that's me and Miss Casey. And I know it hasn't been easy, and that's not what marriage is about. It's not about it being like this easy, like uphill climb or just like this easy path. Like there's ups and downs, but when you have your best friend to lean on through tragedy and through like adversity, but also like in triumph, when she's like singing my praises from the mountaintops, like that's like the really cool thing too. It's not just she's there for me in my lows, she's also celebrating me at my highs. And so, yeah, that's me and Miss Casey. We work together really well. Actually, we don't really see each other as much as we thought we might when she took the job here at Hastings. Like we literally work like 30 feet from one another.
But like our in the same building?
Yeah, our teaching schedules kind of line up where she's teaching, I'm teaching, she's teaching, I'm teaching. But it also is really cool to see us collaborate on some projects.
Yeah.
A new student group that has really been pushed out by, we've seen some interest in the last year or so, is this PEHP, like Bronco Move, and just having like an initiative of like health and wellness. Mm-hmm. And so being like co-advisors, it's been kind of cool to like be in the same room, but like not as like romantic partners, not as friends, not as colleagues, but like as like co-mentors and guiders on the side for these kids. So for these students. So it's been really cool. It's a really, really interesting, but awesome dynamic that works for us. So
that's awesome.
Yeah.
I mean, do you have any other pieces of advice for people that you want to give, as far as, again, suffering with grief, or just if someone's really in a rut and they just can't get out, like, is there something that you want to tell these people just to kind of help them?
I'm giving like unsolicited advice here. I just think the biggest thing for me is, like, be who you are. It's what I say in my healthy lifestyles class. It's what I teach in my leadership of sport and PE classes. There is no one size fits all. There isn't this cookie cutter, minion workshop that's going to spit out exactly what you need to do. When it comes to health and wellness, when it comes to leadership, when it comes to things like life, and when we talk about grief and loss, is like you need to find the mechanisms that work for you. And I think my tattoo artist said it. He says, the only thing in life you try is food. Everything else you just do. And it goes down to like, do the journaling, do the set up the You Will therapist telehealth. If that works for you, go, awesome. Invite a person to go play pickleball or go bowling or play a round of golf. Like, you kind of have to be your own scientist in your own lab. And I think right now it's easy for me to say like, oh, I've suffered 2 major losses in my family. Here's the exact program, right? But I don't think that's the way it's supposed to be. And I would never give somebody a gold stamp and said, this is exactly how it's supposed to be. Mm-hmm. I just say, hey, these are the things that have worked for me, but here's maybe some other strategies or other practices that might help you for those of you who are suffering loss or suffering those, those mental health breakdowns, which you were kind of talking about on episode 2, where it's like you have to be your own scientist. And sometimes
I love that, by the way. I think that's a great saying. You got to be your own scientist.
Your own scientist in your own lab, right?
Love
it's
that.
like what works for Cici doesn't work for me, which doesn't work for Emil, which doesn't work for Miss Casey, right? It's like there's 4 different like crazy universe dynamics that are happening within us, and it's like don't try to emulate exactly what somebody else is doing. So for me, it's like be your own scientist. Try and do things that, and if it doesn't work, it's like, all right, what happened?
Try it again.
Yeah, or try it again, or try another strategy. So for me, it's just be who you are. That's just like one of my like my mantras is just like who you see in front of the classroom and who you see playing pickleball and who you see at El Puerto, maybe grabbing margaritas with my wife. Like I hope that's the same person, and I hope to practice that and be the example for the people that I interact with on an everyday basis. So.
That's awesome.
Thanks for having me.
Absolutely. Yeah. Thank you again for joining today in this episode. It's been an honor hearing your story. I've always this is my first time having Casey and I've had him once in a class, but I've known of you, and I've heard so many great things about you, and so like getting to know you personally has been an honor.
I appreciate that. Yeah. Thank you.
So thank you so much, and just make sure to tune in on next episode. Make sure to review, like, subscribe, and we'll see you in